Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If it's your first time joining, thank you. If you're a previous subscriber or you're coming from a previous video on my channel, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be working on this design, and I have stitched it out twice and I'm not happy with either one of them. I stitched it out on black fabric first, and as you can see, you can't even see the skull at all. And the design called for black thread, so it just was not working on this particular fabric. And I mean, you can see the design if you hold it up close, but also my bobbin thread was coming up where you can see the white. It was coming up through the black fabric, and you could really notice it. And I just was not happy with this one. And this isn't part of the design. This is just a basting stitch around the design to hold the fabric down. So I then decided to stitch this design on a gray fabric so the skull would be more noticeable. And part of the design, when you're stitching out the skull, it stitches out half of it and then it starts stitching out these leaves. So there was really no way that I could stop the stitching in order to get these leaves to be green, which I really wanted them to. So I just kind of had to leave them black. But part of what happened in this design, what I did not like, is that the tension on the skull, my thread started looping, and I don't know, it's not highly noticeable, but what I did is I decided, well, maybe I'll adjust the tension and just stitch over the eyes where they were really bad. And it did help to some degree, but I'm just not happy with it. So I decided that I'm going to stitch it out again. This time I'm going to stitch it out on a patterned white fabric. And the person that is receiving this particular design requested black fabric. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to stitch the design out on white. And you can see that this fabric is a white on white. You can kind of see that there. And I have this black fabric that I'm going to use to go with that. So, and I know that's hard to see. Can you guys see that okay? There you go. I think you can see that. And they're very similar. And I had these fabrics in my stash from when I made my black and white quilt that I made all the blocks, and they are sitting in a bin under my table because I got really burnt out on that project. It wasn't turning out the way I wanted it to, but so I put it aside so I didn't ruin it. So what we're going to go ahead and do with this project, like I said, we're going to stitch this out on white, and then what I think I'll do is with the black fabric, I'm going to create kind of like a, if you're familiar with quilting, it'll be like a log cabin style block kind of around it. So the skull will be the motif in the center of it on white fabric. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so I can set the camera up in front of the machine. And you can see that I have my embroidery unit attached to the machine. So give me just a couple minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the camera set up in front of the machine. My lighting may just be a little bit dimmer because I am running off the battery on the camera. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to my files, and I already have my USB stick brought up. So I'm going to hit my Day of the Dead. I have the design in a file that I just labeled Day of the Dead. So I'm going to bring that up, and then I have it as Day of the Dead roses, which because of the roses. Okay, and then it brings up the different sizes, and I want mine in the largest size. And then I'm going to scroll until I get my file format for my FOF machine, which is VP3. Okay, so it's loading my design. And sometimes it does take a minute. Come on. I'm not sure why it's taking so long today. Come on. Okay, so I have us set up in front of the machine, and I am going to open up my design area, which are these little lines right down here. And if you aren't familiar with a FAF Creative 4.0, you may just have a little section that looks like a file. And if you can see this little icon down here, I know it may be hard to see. So I'm going to hit my files. Then I am going to hit my USB option here. And you can see that it brought up a little USB, so I'm going to hit that. And on a FAF Creative 4.0, I don't know if it's all FAF machines, but you have to do a long press. Okay, so I have my files brought up. It will either bring up like this view, or I can hit where it brings it up in text on a list. And I prefer the text just a little bit better because I can see more of the file names. So I have it labeled as Day of the Dead. And then bring that up. And then I'm going to select the largest design. I know that the 140 is the largest design. So I'm going to long press that, and then I'm going to go to my particular machine format, which is VP3. And there we go. Okay, so you can see that it brought up the different colors, and these are the colors that I am using. The person who this is for really likes purple and teal. So those are the colors that we'll be using. Okay, so before I do that, I'm going to set my frame size or my hoop size, and I'm using a 240 by 150, and it is already set at the 240 by 150. So we're going to go ahead and leave that. So now I'm going to edit my colors. So I want to go to this little spool right here. So I'm going to hit the spool. It's going to bring up my color list, and that is what I want to be changing. So my first color is this kind of like bone color, which is this rose right here. So I'm going to select that. And I know I want to do that in a dark purple. So I'm going to hit my color chart. I'm going to hit my dark purple. I'm going to OK that. And you will see that it changed the color of that particular flower. Then I'm going to move to the next one, which is the small one, and I know I want to do that in my teal color, so I'm going to again hit my color palette, and I want this in my bright teal color. So okay, that one. And the next one is this big rose, and I know I want that one in the, I'm going to be doing that in a purple color. So again, hit my color chart, and I'm going to set it to, I think I want this one, and we're going to OK that. And then our next color, is going to be this flower right here. And I know that I don't have a really light teal color, so this is the color of blue that I will be using. It goes well with the teal color that I'm using, so that's the next one. And I'm going to just hit the lighter blue for that. And then my next color is another kind of purple color, and that one is also going to be teal. So I'm going to hit it as my teal color as well. And then my next color is this flower down here on the bottom, and I'm going to do that one in a lighter purple than what this one was. So again, my color palette, and I'm going to hit just my lighter pinky purple color for that one. So I know to use the next lighter color. And then my next color should be the green, and my green color is just a little bit kind of brighter, so I'm going to just hit my green. Doesn't really matter what shade of green. I didn't even really need to change it because I know I'm only using one green color in my design. And then our last color is going to be black for the skull, and these kind of like fern looking flower leaves or leaves. And I know when I get to that portion of the stitch out, I'm going to have to adjust my tension a bit. Okay, so I like my color selections, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to move that aside, and I am going to make sure I have enough thread in my bobbin before I start out. It looks good. So I'm going to hit my stitch out. It's telling me to attach my correct hoop. So I'm going to slide that under. And let me show you something first here. Let me take that back out. Okay, so let me tilt you over just a little bit. Okay, so I use this foot did not come with my faff machine. My faff machine comes with a little plastic foot that snaps on for the embroidery foot. And I remember a lady telling me that when I was showing a video of maybe it wasn't a little video, it was a shot. I think I just took a photo and shared it to one of the embroidery groups I belong to on Facebook. And she says, I'm really surprised your embroidery came out as well as it did, considering you're using the wrong foot. Well, that's what came with my faff machine, so I had to clarify that for her, and I took pictures of it. So anyway, I actually took a photo of what was in the manual. That's kind of snarky of me, but anyway. So what I did is I actually purchased this foot, and it's called a dynamic spring foot, and I can use it for embroidery, and I can also use it for free motion quilting. You can purchase them at your faff dealership. You can purchase them online. They are expensive. I paid $49.95 for mine. So I know some places offer them half that price, but I got it from my dealership. I was there during the day, and they had them in stock, and I didn't have to wait. So, okay. So to get what I wanted to show you is how I have to get my frame under this, because this kind of moves, it floats, and I have to kind of tilt my frame up to get it underneath there. Can you see that flexing? This flexes a little for me to get the, can you see that, how it's moving? I have to put the frame up under, the hoop up underneath that. Okay. Then what I do when I attach my hoop, you can see the clip here that holds the hoop. This is the arm that holds your embroidery hoop. And for those of you that aren't familiar with my channel, my faff machine, I purchased it used, and the person that had it before me was picking up the embroidery unit by this arm that's here on the side or on the top. And she bent a portion that's right back, I don't know if you can see it. It's right back here in the back. She bent that. So one day when I went to go, I only had my machine for a couple of weeks. So I went to go attach it, and if you're familiar with embroidery machines, the embroidery unit calibrates every time you attach it to your machine. And what happened is that metal snapped because it just had a little bit too much tension on it after she was picking it up by that, and it just broke. And if I was to have to buy that brand new, this whole embroidery unit's $2,000. Well, that's what I paid for my machine used. So I just could not see doing that, and I was really, really disappointed. But my FAF dealership was able to find me a brand new embroidery unit in their storage, and it didn't have the carrying case, and it didn't have the additional frames. Well, I wasn't worried about that because I had all that already. So I don't know what that was. There was just a noise. So, okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach my hoop to the frame. And for the long story, so what I do is I put my hand here on top of it. So I'm not putting any additional pressure on the track of my embroidery unit. And I've got a scratch on my arm. Okay, so I'm going to hold this down, and I'm going to line you can see me lining it up here. Let me tilt this a little more. Okay, so you can see that there. I'm going to put my hoop in this little notch, and I'm going to hold the top down, and I just line it up. I push it until you hear the click. And that's all you have to do. Okay, so I'm going to pause a moment because I heard some kind of weird alarm go off. So I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back. It was just something on the TV out in the other room. My husband's watching TV in the other room, but it sounded like an alarm of some kind. It was kind of weird. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and thread with my first color, which is going to be my maroon. And I'm actually going to hit, before I thread, I'm going to hit my stitch out button for the embroidery. And it's going to go to its start position. And if you notice, let me tilt you just a little bit. If you notice on the machine, it's going to give me my color list here off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my first color, which is my maroon, or my deep purple, pretty close to maroon. And I'm kind of like threading over here off to the side and trying not to hit the camera. And okay. And hopefully my needle threader is going to cooperate with me today. There are some days where it just does not like to cooperate. And it worked today. So I'm going to pull my thread through here. Well, okay. Come on. And I didn't need that long of a tail on there, so that was my bad. Okay, so I just like to take on the end of my thread, I just kind of grab it with my tweezers and stick it through the little foot there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And this particular flower says it's going to take 2 minutes to stitch out. You can see my time right here. I'm going to check the speed of my stitch, and it is in the mid-range. You can see right there, it's mid-range. And I will probably adjust my speed a little bit later when I get to some of the larger flowers so they don't take as much time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start my stitching. And I'm going to stop because for some reason it is not, my stitching is not staying in the fabric. So I'm going to go back to my beginning position. I'm not sure why it's not. Okay, I see why. So when I threaded my machine, it did not thread correctly. It was wrapped around the needle. So I'm going to just snip that and I'm just going to thread it by hand. Hopefully I'm not getting my big head in here. Okay. Okay, so I can see that it is threaded correctly. Oops. Okay, and we're going to restart. Okay, and now it is stitching. I am going to stop the stitching and I'm going to trim my thread tail. Okay, and it is. I do not like these scissors very well. I try to use, where are my nippers? I try to use nippers because they just, to me, okay, that isn't. It cuts a little bit better. And a little trick that if your thread kind of does like a little fiber stuff when you trim it, you can just take a small piece of tape and see those little fibers on there? You can kind of lift those fibers off the fabric so it won't stitch into your design. Okay, and we start. And I am using a 7511 embroidery machine embroidery needle. So I'm going to go let this go ahead and continue playing while this stitches out so you can see. And it is just laying down the base of the design. When we get to the final color is when it's going to actually, I can show you here on this one, you can see the outline of the flowers. And that's done in black. That's the top stitching of the design. And that's what's going to give it all the dimension. Got one more minute left to stitch out. And what I did is I just floated my fabric. I hooped the first piece of cutaway stabilizer. I floated the second piece of cutaway stabilizer and I floated my fabric. And the reason why I did that, the pattern itself calls for a tearaway, but I am making this into a pillow, so I know it's going to be washed, so I don't want that cutaway stabilizer. Or, I'm sorry, the tearaway stabilizer. I don't want that. Okay, so you can see here off to the side that it's telling us our next additional color, and that is going to be my teal. And on your embroidery machines, when it tells you to change your color, don't pull your thread out through the top of your machine. Cut the thread at the top and then pull it out from the bottom. And the reason why is because it can really mess up your tension discs inside your machine. Sorry about my long reach there. Okay, so no. wrap this back up on the spool real quick. If I don't stop and take the time to actually wrap the thread around my spool, little Luna will get a hold of the thread and play with it. Okay, so I usually don't have issues with my, oops, sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to pause the camera and thread off camera. It's just a little bit faster and I don't have to worry about bumping the camera. Give me just a moment. Okay, so I got the next color threaded, and this one's just going to take 1 minute, so it's going to be really quick. I'm going to let it start, pause it, cut my thread tail, and I have learned my lesson about not pulling this thread tail up and out because it can make a loop at the top and pull the knot loose. So I just go ahead and cut it. Okay. And this one is almost already done stitching. It's got about 50 more stitches. And that one's finished. And then our next color is going to be our first light purple. And cut my thread at the top again, pull out the bottom, and I'm going to pause again to rethread. I'll be right back. Oops, sorry about that, rocking back and forth. So our next color is threaded. It says it's going to take 4 minutes to stitch out. So I'm going to speed this up just 1 notch. Whoops. And we're going to go ahead and start. And let me clear that. Now it says it's going to take 3 minutes. I will go ahead and start it and then pause the camera and keep working on our colors. And when we get to the green and the black, the final colors, I will come back and let you see how everything's looking. And then we'll pause again because the black will take, depending on the speed I have it set at, anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, about that, to stitch out. So I will be back in a few minutes, and with the time that I am away, I will be stitching this out. I don't know why I blanked on that there for a minute. Okay, so we will see you all in a few minutes. Okay, so we are at the last color before we go to the black that's going to actually stitch out the skull and the final overlay design. And this is the green for some of the leaves. So I thought I'd go ahead and come back and let you see the green portion stitch out before we get to the black. So I'm going to go ahead and start the green. And this is going to take 3 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and just let it stitch out and let you watch this. Hopefully you guys can see that well enough. Sometimes my LED light in the machine will kind of wash out the design a little. That is the first portion of the leaf. There's going to be, stop that and cut this thread tail. I'm not sure why, but in some designs it cuts the threads for you, and in some it doesn't. And in this particular portion of this one, it is not cutting the jump threads for the green leaves. And I like cutting my jump threads just so they don't get overlapped if the design overlaps on them. If you're not familiar with machine embroidery yet, you'll learn about jump threads over time, and it's always really good to get in the habit of cutting them if your machine doesn't cut them already for you. Just go ahead and pause and cut them, because I've had a couple designs where it's stitched over them and I could not get them out, and I did not like the look. It just didn't look aesthetic to me. Okay, so I'm going to pause again and cut this jump thread, and I think I'm going to restart and stitch over the leaves because it is looping on the leaves. I'm going to go back to that, and I really don't like the way it looks. So I'm going to cut this thread, and I'm going to pop back to the beginning of where my green is. Let me go ahead and cut this. And I don't like the loops, and that is the whole reason why I redid the design that was on the gray, is because there was loops on it. So I'm going to adjust my tension down 2 notches and restart my green, because it's okay if it's gonna restitch over these, and hopefully it's gonna work and I'm not gonna have to restart this design all over again. Okay, so I lowered my tension down 2 notches. Sometimes people will tell you don't mess with your tension, but in some designs, depending on how the designer designed it and wrote the design pattern, your tension's not going to match no matter what you do unless you adjust your tension. So I'm going to pause, cut this jump thread again. And it does look better on the first leaf already. I like that it looks a darker green since I'm restitching it. And I'm going to watch this one close. And I don't see any loops yet, which is really good. This is the area here where it started showing loops in this particular part right here. There were some loops, and it is restitching over those, and it is looking good. Okay, I think I saved the design where I won't have to restart it. Okay, so now it's going to jump to the next leaf, and they may not be as dark. I'm going to stop, cut that thread. So there are, you'll learn as you progress through your machine embroidery, that little things that you have to finesse. Some people say that if a design is good, you shouldn't have to adjust anything, you shouldn't have to change anything. Well, sometimes you do. I don't care what anybody says. Sometimes you do. Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue. And when this particular leaf finishes stitching out, I'm going to go back in stitches and restitch over it, since we restitched over these two. These two are going to be darker where that one isn't. So I'm going to go ahead and let it continue on this little portion. Okay, so I'm going to stop. And I stopped it in time before it started the next one. So I'm going to just cut that, cut this jump thread, let it re-stitch over that. So I'm gonna lift this, pull my thread out a little, and I'm gonna just go back stitches until I know where this particular portion started. Okay, so I know it went back, so now I'm going to move forward so I know where that was finished and that part started. I went back just a little too far. Okay, so that's where it started. Let me make sure. Go back one, go forward one. Okay, sometimes you may have to do that. I learned it by trial and error, so hopefully I really do like the way these, after I restitched over the top of it, how it looks. So that's what I'm doing, is stitching out these additional leaves and then restitching them again so I get that bold look again. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to pause, cut that thread real quick. So my machine for this design, when the tension, it was at a 2.8, and I lowered it down to 2.4, and I am no longer getting those loops in it. So I gotta pause real quick and cut this small jump stitch here. And sometimes it's a little hard to get in there. There we go. Restart. And now it's going to go to, after this little portion here, it's going to go to the final green leaf. And I know to advance it back to stitch 1016. I'm going to pause that, and you can see my jump thread here. And my black portion's got a lot of jump threads in it as well, so I will be stopping on that a lot as well to cut all those jump threads. Part's almost finished, and then I'll advance back. Okay, so I got to go back to that. Got to go back to the green and advance it to stitch over that final portion. So I know it was stitch 1016. Or 1016, so I can go to 1016 and okay that, and that didn't work because that was for my green design. Okay, so I'm just going to advance it. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video as I advance to get to this portion to stitch over that one again. So once I get the black threaded and the skull started, I will come back and let you see that. Be back in just a moment. Okay, so we are at the last portion of the design, and it says it's going to take 28 minutes to stitch out the skull because of the speed I have it on. I do not want it to stitch that fast. So I'm going to go over here. Let me adjust the camera. I'm going to clear my black. I'm going to go to my speed, and I'm going to slow it down to almost the slowest speed because I want this to stitch out correctly. After the third time of stitching this design out, I'm kind of over it. So I want it to be correct the first time around. So it has now, ooh, I don't know if I want that. 1 hour and 11 minutes. I don't think that that is, so we're just going to do it at the medium speed. It says 47 minutes. I'm happier with that. So let me go ahead and tilt you back this way so you can see it start to stitch out. And hopefully the tension of 2.4, let me pause to cut my thread, and you may all be able to hear that big military plane flying over right now. And you can see Luna's little feet back there in the background, Luna the crafty kitty. You may see her head poke through there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stitch out. I will let you guys watch it for a few minutes, and then I will go ahead and pause so it continues to stitch out, and knock on wood, everything works well. I should be able to tell very quickly because the portion that is going to stitch out right now is this here, the eyes, and this is where I noticed the looping to start. And you can kind of see how it's kind of rough right there. That's where it started looping, and then I stitched over the top of it to try to save it. I just wasn't happy with it. So hopefully this is going to work well. And let's go ahead and start. I should notice quickly if there's any loops. So far, so good. And nothing yet. So it got about halfway before the first eye was finished when I noticed the loops. And okay, so I noticed loops already. I'm going to cut my thread. I'm going to pick out these threads, restart it. I don't want to stitch over just that little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, take all this black stitching out. I'm going to have to take the frame completely off the machine to do that. And so I'm going to cut the thread. And I'm able to leave the design right where it is and start it back on that black again. I will pause, pick out the stitches, and be right back. Okay, so I have picked all those stitches out. I do have just a little speck of black right there that just remove. It was really easy and quick, about 2-3 minutes to pick the stitches out, since thank God I didn't have a lot. I have dropped my tension down one more notch to 2.2. Original setting was 2.8. So I have set it back to the start of the black. I'm going to go ahead and restart. And I'm going to pause and cut my thread tail. And hopefully we are going to be okay. Whoops, sorry, I keep hitting that camera. Okay. Okay, it looks okay so far. I don't know if it's just part of the design, but that still looks pretty loopy to me. I'm just not happy with that. I know it's not my machine because all of this threaded out, did really well. So I'm going to look in my manual, and I know it told me that to lower the thread tension. So tension, I'm going to pause and I will be right back. Okay, so I picked the threads out again for the second time, and I discovered that what my issue was is I was turning the tension down, and that was my mistake. In this portion, I had to turn it up. So in the leaves, the turning it down worked just fine. So in this portion, I actually turned it up. It was originally set at 2.8. I have since turned it up to 3.0, and it looked like it was stitching better. So I'm going to go ahead and restart. And knock on wood, this time really does work. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to trim the thread tail. And knock on wood, it's not going to happen again. I am seriously getting over this design. And I'm not saying it's a bad design. If I would have tried probably stitching this out in a small size on my Brother machine, it probably would have worked perfect. My Brother machine, you could stitch with your eyes closed on it, but it is only a 4.4 size, so I wanted a larger size. Okay, anyway, getting off track. Back to the design. And much better. Much better. Oh. Okay, I think I found out the issue. The tension was just too low on my particular machine. I set the tension up 1 notch. After trial and error, turning it down a couple notches, it did not work, didn't fix the issue. Turned it up 1 notch, and it's fine now. I am going to go ahead and let this continue stitching. It's going to take 41 minutes. So I'll let you see the eyeballs and maybe the nose portion of the skull stitch out, and then I will pause video and come back when it's complete. Let me go ahead and pause this part though and cut this jump thread, because this is one of those jump threads that will be stitched over, and I don't like that on the nose. So a good thing when you're experiencing issues like this with a design, take the time to write it down. So in my next time, if I ever stitch out this design, I'll know to adjust the tension 1 down for the leaf portion, and adjust the tension up a notch in the skull stitching portion. And it's looking so much better. Okay, so I'm going to pause again, cut this jump thread. I just don't like it. I hate jump threads. I really do. If you're fortunate enough to have a machine that cuts them for you, it is amazing. My brother cuts a lot of the jump threads, not all of them. And usually on designs, my FAF will do it, but it just depends on the designer. Also, they could forget to cut the jump stitches. Okay, so you can see part of the skull starting to take shape there. Its eyes. Okay. I'm going to pause again, cut that jump stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and let the skull continue stitching out. I will come back one more time before it's finished so you can look, you can see it, and I will be back soon. Okay, so I have paused the stitching, and that way you can see some of the detail here starting to stitch out over the top. So far it's looking really good. I'm really happy with the design, and I hope the person that's going to be getting this will be happy with it as well, because I don't want to stitch it out again. I'm going to go ahead and continue stitching, and once it's complete, I will be back. Okay, so we have about 3.5 minutes until the design is completely stitched out, and you can see it's doing the bottom portion here of some of the leaves. Now it's going up back into the skull, and it's going to finish the teeth area of the skull in just a second. And I am really pleased with the way it has stitched out this time. There were the few errors I had to work through and get those figured out, and I am really happy that I did get those figured out without ruining the design overall and wasting even more fabric. And you can see the mouth starting to take up some shape. It has 2 more minutes left in the design. When this is completed with the stitching, I will pause the video again, readjust the camera, and show you what it looks like when it's completed, and then we'll take it out of the hoop. So once it finishes stitching the mouth portion, it's going to go back up into one of the flowers, finish a few of the stitches that it didn't, and then I think it ends in one of the leaves, if I remember correctly. So now it's coming back down around the edge of the skull, and it's going to come around this way and finish up into one of the leaves. We're about 150 to maybe 200 stitches before it's complete, maybe even less than that. Almost finished. And there we go. Our design is complete. Okay, so I am going to take the frame off the machine, readjust the camera, and I will show you the finished design. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I have it off the machine. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the hoop so we can take it off and take it out of the hoop. Put the hoop aside. And this is where you can see how I did do the 2 layers of the cutaway, and I will definitely cut those away. So this is our, move that aside a little. This is our finished design. You can see a little bit of pucker, and that is okay. This is going to be on a pillow, and I'm going to be adding some more fabric around this. And compared to the first design, let me show you my first stitch out that I did. So this was the first one, and this was the basting stitch around it. And you can barely see the skull. and like I mentioned in the front of the video, you could see the white bobbin thread coming up through the black on the black fabric. This otherwise stitched out perfectly. Wouldn't you know it? It stitched perfectly, but on the black fabric, it just did not work. So you can see that it just did not work. Then I stitched it out on the gray fabric, and I had to double stitch over the eyes. Was not happy with it because it was looping. Stitching over it kind of did help the looping, kind of concealed it a little bit, but I still was not happy with the design. When I make something, I want it to be presentable. This to me, I knew I could do better work, so I wasn't happy with this one. And this one, in the video, I showed you where the eyes, where I didn't have the tension for the stitching quite right, so I had to pick out the stitching on the eyes twice, readjusted my tension, made it a little tighter, and it went so much better. And you can see that it's not looped. It looks really good in my opinion. I'm really happy with it stitched out on the white. The next step to do is I'm going to trim this down to the correct size that I need it to be. And then I will finish the design that this will be. This is going to be a motif in the center of a large, I am thinking to do it as a large log cabin style block, and then that will be made into a large throw pillow. And I am considering using this fabric to construct it. And you can see that that is I showed you this in the beginning of the video, so like that. And you can see that this one was a white. You can kind of see it was a white on white, so it kind of matches the swirl. So I am really pleased with it now. Third time's a charm. And my next design is going to be another skull design. It will be for the same person. So hopefully I will not have any mistakes with that design, because it is going to be, I believe, a lot denser stitching. So we're going to have to see how that turns out. If there were any questions, please comment down below. Also, if you don't want to leave a comment, let me find it. I had it sitting here just a moment ago. If you'd rather not comment down in the comment section, you can always email me at jsnc18@gmail.com. And hopefully, hopefully the next one's going to go really well. And I'm very pleased with the way it turned out this time. So we'll see you all next time. Have a great night, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.